Okay, I think we can get started. These are all really excellent book suggestions. Um, I want to say hello to those who have just tuned in. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today. My name is Sophie and I'm the Events and Marketing Specialist at BiblioCommons. Like I mentioned earlier, we will be discussing planning and promoting your library's online events. And we're joined today by Cris, Miranda, and Katie Woods from San Mateo County Libraries, and Sarah Rudman and Haley Kaiser from Jefferson County Public Library. Sorry about that. We'll also be joined by my colleagues at BiblioCommons, Erica, Reno, and Alex. I'd like to note that we do have a Q&A section to pose questions. I encourage you all to write down any questions you have during the presentation, and we will be sure to answer them throughout the presentation itself. You'll notice that there is also a separate chat function, which many of you have been using, and we ask that you share your feedback and thoughts through the chat so that we can review them later. Please check now to make sure that you are sending your messages out to all attendees rather than just to the panelists. As always, this webinar is being recorded and uploaded to YouTube. The link will be emailed to you within a few days, and the transcript to this webinar will also be available upon request. And with that said, I will let Erica take it away.
Thanks, Sophie. Hi, everyone, and happy National Library Week. I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to our amazing panelists, Cris, Katie, Haley, and Sarah. I know these are crazy times for everyone, and all the folks that we want to hear from are probably working double, triple time, just trying to figure out the new normal and figure out how to serve our patrons best. So thank you so much to our panelists. We're so excited and really excited about the interest in this topic today. So for our agenda, we'll be talking about the new virtual events that everybody's spinning up for all ages across public libraries. And then we'll dive into a little bit of the planning that both San Mateo County Libraries did and Jefferson County Public Libraries did as sort of two different kind of case studies. These two libraries caught our eye as libraries that just had a ton of programs, all of a sudden it's seeming magical. And so we'll hear from them in terms of their process and how they created their staff workflows to encourage so much programming. And then we'll talk a little bit about the new enhancements to BiblioEvents to better support virtual events and hear more from you all about what public libraries are planning next. So we'll jump in. First of all, it has just been unbelievably heartwarming to see so many online events that weren't there before just coming online. And of course, we're all just trying to do the best we can in the situation that we have. And I'm sure many of you saw the Public Library Association survey that was conducted the very end of March, where at the time was a pretty high number of people who participated in the survey, and of those, 98 of the libraries were closed to the public. I think at one point I had heard every ULC library was closed to the public. And of course, when we say that, we mean our buildings are closed. Of course, libraries are working hard online, as we know from this program. And that also, of the activities that public library staff were working on, is that 61% of the folks in, again, end of March, early April, were working on adding virtual programming. I think now, if they were to do this survey, I'm guessing that number would be even higher. So as we look at the sort of vast variety of online programs that libraries are bringing to their communities, of course, folks are doing story time, which is fantastic. These are just a few examples. Like San Mateo County libraries are doing story time in multiple languages. Lawrence Public is doing Facebook Live story time, also in multiple languages. This is the virtual Let's Dance, which isn't necessarily story time, but lots of fun things, and Jefferson County has other story times as well. But we also wanted to expand it in terms of online programs, and not just programs that are online, but just programs that aren't in the library. And what are the sort of interesting, creative ideas that public libraries are bringing to this new space, and specifically things for all ages. So this is just a few examples before we dive in to talk to our panelists. But of course, April is National Poetry Month, and we have a lot of libraries trying to take what would have been an in-person event and take it online. So here, King County is celebrating Poetry Month. King County also has a Reading with Rover online, which I love because everyone loves Read to a Dog, and they found a way to bring this online as well. This is from Lawrence Public Library. We see lots of book clubs going on there too, which of course when people are quarantined or sheltering in place, it's so important to be able to reach out and be part of your community and hear from other folks and have that human connection. So it's great to see these different book clubs coming online. This is from Halifax Public Library. They have Adult Crafternoon, and a lot of these libraries have just, again, have so many interesting craft programs, programs about music and arts and books, all coming online so quickly. In this case, they're using Zoom, and they do use registration for this. And then folks can log in and enjoy a crafternoon. Libraries have open helplines as well to help with job applications, resumes, computer programs. Lots of people are doing online reference. Here's a virtual family finders from the Mountain Genealogy Society. This is Jefferson County Libraries program. I like this too. So Brad Allen is the director at Lawrence Public Library, and he has a Getting Chatty program, specifically talking to local luminaries. So I think it's a great way to, again, really showcase the library's services to the community, how the library can, be that place for us even when we can't go there in person. This is a program that was already scheduled with Columbus Metropolitan Library and for National Library Week with Dr. Catherine Sullivan, and now it's going to be totally online and live streaming the author event. This is a great cooking class. Again, this is King County. The Cooking with Amanda, she does like a Zoom call, and she cooks in her kitchen, and you can learn her fabulous recipes for lentils and beans. This is the Recycled Art Challenge with Santa Clara County District in California. And another good example I thought was the virtual Wednesday watch party at Jefferson County, and I'm sure Haley will talk more about this, but that you join on Facebook and watch a film and everyone can check in and comment on it as they go. And then the other thing I think is great what libraries are doing now, and I think it makes total sense, so rather than having to present every online program or every online event yourself, but also curating great things that are happening in your community or online, or that are just generally relevant to books, movies, or music. So this is actually a program that San Mateo County Libraries was promoting with Ben Gibbard Live from Home. And you can log in and see his week or daily presentations. And here's another example of the local poet laureate. So again, libraries don't have to present all the programs themselves. There's a huge role to be played just by curating great things that are happening locally or nationally. The Library of Congress has done some amazing programs too. And then here's another one from San Mateo County, the Afternoon Doodling with Lynn. So you can log in, sketch, get some good tips, and really, be able to engage and enjoy and create. So with that, let's talk to Cris and Katie at San Mateo County. I'm going to stop sharing so that Cris can share. So, Katie and Cris, can you guys talk about how you were able to spin up so many events for all ages so quickly?
Yes, and thank you for having us. We're excited to talk about this amazing journey that we've been on. It has been challenging, but really exciting to see how innovative our staff is and what they've been able to come up with in such a short period of time. When we went into shelter in place, we really took this opportunity within 3 days to do a redesign of our homepage to make sure that what our patrons were seeing were online content that was available to them to kind of help them in their own transition to sheltering in place. So we really had a lot of task force within our staff that just seemed to pop up and work with different divisions like our youth and adult service work groups. And from there, the ideas just really started coming in at full speed. And we had to find a creative way as a communications team in how we're going to present and how we're going to help transition our virtual programming to our online platform. And organization was top of mind. So the first thing that we did was to try and take everything off of email with these task force groups and put everything inside an editorial calendar that communications team could pull final and approved content from to upload onto our website. So we have multiple tabs at the bottom, from social media to our external event trackers, blog tracker, and what you're looking at now is our SMCL live events. So these are our staff programming with full descriptions, dates, time, and then on the far right is a list of, has it been published, has it not? And that has really been a huge help for us in making sure that, one, we know what is going on with the latest programming that's coming in from these task force, and also how we can best support them as a communications team when it comes to publicizing these wonderful events out to our patrons. Cris, do you want to add on to this question?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, we've had wonderful staff who have stepped up to the plate to share their expertise and their talents on these live events. In addition to the current live events that we have right now going on, we're also going to start doing a one-on-one assistance where our librarians can actually be booked by patrons for tech help or book club discussions and readers advisory. So we look forward to implementing that next week.
So Cris and Katie, what guidelines and other tips or support did you provide your staff to create and manage their online events?
So with the different task force, we kind of divided up areas that we needed assistance with to bring everyone on board, so we were all working in the same direction. So we assisted with IT when it came to kind of viewing what software we would be using to put out these virtual programmings, looking at privacy concerns for our patrons, if they would need to register with an email and what that looked like. We decided early on for our youth programming, we were just filtering straight from Zoom to YouTube, so they could just click on with a link without having to put in an email address to access the program. We also had a task force behind the visualization of what our program should look like and branding and putting those guidelines together. So we put together a best practices one pager to help in identifying, a simple background is best. Make sure you don't have any backlighting happening. Lift up your computer so we're not looking at you from a lower angle up and seeing most of the ceiling. Tips like that, and then also really trying to hone in on our branding and coming up with consistent intros so people are used to introducing themselves, what library they normally work at, what we're doing with supporting virtual programming. And then we really wanted to take this opportunity at the end of all of our programming to plug census, since we're no longer in our branches and we can't do the normal census promotions. That was a clever way that we thought we can kind of bring that back up to our patrons to kind of remind them that census is still happening and that they can still fill it out online.
Right, so smart. So how do you guys plug the census? Do you do it at the end of each program?
We try to do it at the end of each program, just as a closing out remark. And of course, we're also pushing it out on social media and in our patron newsletters. So really just kind of making sure that there's some consistency across the board when it comes to our programming and brand language, and making sure that our staff also feel comfortable if this is something that's new to them. So one thing that we worked with the programming team on is opening up these recorded sessions just to our staff via a private link for them to view practice sessions. So people can get real-time feedback, see the chat going on, saying, oh, it'd be helpful if you maybe turned a little bit farther to the right or readjusted your screen, or we can't see the stuffed animal that you're using as a prop unless you are holding up a little higher. So that really gave our staff incredible feedback. And we also, for those that needed additional assistance or just some extra coaching to get over their nervousness, we did like one-on-one help to make sure that they felt as comfortable and ready to go as possible, and they had as much training and practice as they needed before they went live out to our patrons.
So good. I noticed also, at least from some of the programs I've seen, is that everyone is wearing their San Mateo County Libraries t-shirts. Did they already have those, or did you guys ship them out to them?
A little bit of both. So all of our staff do have an SMCL branded shirt, but of course with some kept it at the branch. So we had to kind of organize and figure out how we can get t-shirts to everyone, or, if we can go pick up and send it to their house and make sure that everyone had that full representation and look, because we wanted people to understand that this was staff leading this program, because when we first transitioned and redesigned our website in the beginning days of shelter in place, as a quick fix, we were linking to external events. So we really just wanted to remind folks that these are our staff and they're wearing the branded shirts. So they're getting familiar with the look and feel of what our virtual programming looks like.
Yes, absolutely. So how else did you make changes to your website to promote your online events?
As Katie mentioned, we completely redesigned the homepage to really highlight all of the online events and online services that we offer. So right now you're actually seeing the redesigned homepage. We have here on the right all of our online events, which are a combination of the SMCL live events, which we do. And we also have the external online events that you mentioned, Erica. We also have a banner here which highlights our more important campaigns, like our live experience events. We have the 2020 census. We are doing library staff and using our 3D printers to create protective gear for our healthcare workers here in San Mateo County. So it just highlights the very important campaigns that we want to bring to the patrons' attention right now. And then we do have closure FAQs listed right here, and highlights of our e-collection, ebooks, e-audiobooks, streaming videos, and streaming music. And then we divide the section by audience. So we have youth and families, adults and seniors, where we link blog posts, some of our events, or some of our online resources, and use that areas there to highlight what applies to each of the different audience groups. And then we do have a section that several of our patrons really love, which is Explore for Home, where we highlight online exhibits that the San Francisco Museum of Arts is doing, and other different Museum of Arts are doing, or like the Oakland Bay Aquarium, the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And they could click on this and do an online virtual experience of their exhibits. And then we also highlight additional online resources that we offer that are available online. And then we have a little COVID-19 information and resources and library news section at the bottom, which highlights everything that's going on right now due to the COVID-19 pandemic. When our patrons actually click on the live experience, it actually takes the patrons to the Explore page, where it lists all of our live experiences by week. And the reason why we highlight it this way is that we actually do offer recordings of the actual live stream events, so they could come back and see all of the recorded events from previous weeks. And if they actually click on one of them, it goes to a blog post, and we have in the blog post the dates of all of the events, the link to actually live stream each of the events, and then underneath, once the event has happened, we have the view recording here, where they can actually see the actual recording of the event in case they missed the live streaming. In addition to this redesign of the homepage, we also just created a new teacher and student resource page where we highlight online events for students and for teachers for homework help and studying at home. Anything to add, Katie?
No, I think that was great. We really just wanted to focus on making our resources easy to find. And we were hearing a lot of feedback from educators and parents who are now, facing this new normal of homeschooling and what that looks like for them. So we thought it'd be perfect, and especially with now having our cards built out with V3, putting together an online resource page for student and educators really didn't take that long to do, because the content already existed. We just wanted to find one location where we could put it all together under one link to help students and teachers find what they need.
Yes, It's so impressive, seriously. I can't believe how much you guys have gotten done in just like a couple of weeks. It's just like so well thought out. So one thing, again, that I mentioned because I think it's just exciting when libraries kind of look beyond their walls, not that we have walls right now, but in presenting or rather promoting events beyond the ones that you guys are creating yourselves, what kinds of guidelines do you have for those outside events? Like, so when you're, and how are you deciding like which events would you promote through the library's website, even if the library isn't presenting themselves?
Yeah, we had to have a lot of discussions on what that would look like, and especially because we were trying to turn it around so quickly. So we created a task force that really teamed up with the Youth and Adult Services work group in the very beginning stages of all of this to start putting together a list that managers would have final say over and reviewing, and that actually went on that larger SMCL editorial calendar before it was published. And from there, managers would go through and make sure, is this appropriate for all audiences? Are they linking? We had to put language on there to explain to our patrons that this is not an SMCL hosted event. It could be canceled with little language, things like that, just to make sure that those lines were very clear. And then of course, it's very helpful when we have final say as a communications team. We go in and approve the events that have been loaded onto BiblioEvents for publication. So we kind of had multiple eyes on what content was going up. We do try to avoid like product placement, things like that. But we were really kind of hearing and seeing from our other libraries, you know, it's so helpful working for a library and communications. And I don't have a library background. So to see that it's so open with people sharing their knowledge and tips and tools and what they're using. And we've reached out to multiple libraries to hear what they're doing, what guidelines they're setting, what events, our external events were really popular for their patrons. And we tried to mimic that as much as possible when we were thinking about what our patrons would need and were looking for.
Terrific. So what channels beyond the website, what channels are you all using to promote your online events? And like what's been most successful and what kind of response have you received from your community?
Besides the website, we've been doing several email blasts where we actually send an email to all of our patrons to let them know what's happening, what's going on. We also use our different social media channels, which have actually been great because our community partners have been actually sharing our posts on their social media channels. And that actually was very successful because it led to a local TV station, ABC7 News, doing a piece about our new homepage redesign and our new online events. And we've gotten great feedback, great comments through social media about all of the changes. And it seems like it's been a great success so far.
And
Terrific.
this has been quite, I just want to add one quick thing onto this. As Cris mentioned, like our patron emails have been a great resource for us to push out what events we're hosting this week. And really, we needed to get organized on our website and with our virtual programming team. And now we're kind of at this great point where we can start excelling our marketing and promotions. So we're looking forward to pushing additional content out publicly. And one other thing that we're considering is putting together a patron survey, just a short survey, either via patron email or also adding a card on our website that just asks them what it is that they're looking for in virtual programming. Are we meeting their needs? And kind of getting feedback that way, as well as through our new texting app where patrons can text a question in, and then we have library support staff that are texting them back. I think it's important we may think that we're doing such an excellent job, but we really want to make sure that we're providing the content that our patrons really need. So we're hoping to accomplish that in the next stage with this survey.
Fantastic. Yes, so good. Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what your patrons say, but I have to think they're going to be like, you'll just get a lot of gushy, nice comments about how wonderful you guys are and how much people appreciate what you're doing. So, Sophie, do we have questions for Katie and Cris?
Yeah, we have quite a number of questions actually. I'll start with our Q&A and then I'll move over to kind of the questions that have been um, sparse throughout the chat. So we have Caitlin Duncan and Anne Shinkovich kind of asking the same thing. They're asking if staff are using their own devices to record videos, or did IT give them any equipment? And have there been any concerns about expecting staff to film themselves in their own homes? Or patrons having access to the librarians in a very much more personal way?
Those are great questions. When we first went into shelter in place, I mean, it was a very quick day turnaround, and our IT department, they are wonderful. They were trying to make sure that people had laptops and Wi-Fi hotspots if they had a not so great connection at home. We were also trying to prep for this along the way. When we heard that the school districts were closing down, we knew that, libraries would be soon to follow. So making sure and checking with staff, sending an all staff survey out to see what equipment do you need to telework and how we can best assist you gave us a really great baseline to helping everyone out. When it comes to the comfort level behind virtual programs, that was something that was a big discussion with those that did want to partake and put on programming within their homes, because there is some level of privacy that you lose when you're live on camera and you're in your home. And that's where we really wanted to start utilizing those practice sessions for comfort, and also setting those best practices in play when it comes to, finding a background that doesn't have a lot of things, that's pretty clear. That way your personal items or, product placement is not unintentionally showcasing in the video. And really checking in. Some people had no problem with it and some needed additional practice to feel good about it, but this is really all of a volunteer effort. So we weren't mandating that people who normally do programs in our branches now have to transition over to this virtual programming task force. And it's also given some opportunity for those that are not normally in charge of programming inside the branches when we were open to showcase their skills online. So it's been a bit of a mix, but I have to say our staff, I was blown away with the number of staff that said they wanted to help and put on virtual programming. That number really did surprise me.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Robin asking, how often do you email patrons about events?
When we first, before shelter in place, our branches had their individual newsletters, but things were, and then we had our main SMCL account that would send large emails out to all patrons of the library card when we had big news, like when we went Find Free or when we launched bikes. But with things changing so quickly with the different health ordinances that were coming down and rules and regulations and timing, we really thought it would be best to put the individual branch newsletters on pause so we could coordinate having a unified message and an approved message through our main account, just to make sure that no one was getting dates or times or, our roadmap of how we were closing and transitioning to this next step. Everyone will be on the same page. So we're trying to, I think we probably sent out 3 emails, right, Cris, since we've been in shelter in place, and this will be our 4th, just letting people know what's going on. And now that it's less about the closure of the libraries, we're really focusing on the exciting news and innovative ideas that are coming through. So like our 3D printing program that's now printing face shields for hospital personnel, our virtual programming list, our poet laureate. We just partnered up with our county poet laureate to do a poetry program online. So we're really excited to kind of share those out and get some more positive news and ways of connecting with our patrons. And I think Cris is going to click on that link now so you can see what we're doing for our poet laureate reading. Cris, do you want to add anything?
No, I think you covered it all, Katie.
I'll just, there's a lot of questions, a lot of really great questions, but I'm going to stick to the Q&A ones for now. If anyone's asked a question in the chat, they can re-ask that question in the Q&A section if they can. So we have a question from Sarah Scott. What tips do you have for a virtual event that allows for patron interaction, such as a movie discussion or the live doodling event?
So that's something that we're really just starting to get into as we're broadening our virtual programming. So coming up, I know Cris mentioned our IT one-on-one assistance, and we're looking at using LibCal to schedule those one-on-one interactions for individual IT help. And then we'll start opening up a Zoom once we get the patrons' email through registration. And this will be the same through our book clubs or other interactive events. We plan on having the patron register. From there, we'll send them an email that says you are confirmed for this event. And we will be emailing you a password an hour before the event starts. And that really is just to make sure that we're following best practices when it comes to Zoom privacy.
Great, and we'll just do one more for now and then save it to the end. Julie Sherwood asks, are you finding that your programs are mostly reaching your community? Do they require a library card, or are they open to anyone who can access the internet? Do you know who is attending your online programs?
Our online events are pretty much accessible to anyone who can log in and go into YouTube live streaming. They don't have to have an account. It's just done through live streaming. So it can be accessible to anyone within our service area or even outside the service area.
Great. I'm gonna turn it back over to Erica, just in the interest of time, and we will get to some more of these questions later.
Great. Thank you so much, Sophie. And thanks, Cris and Katie. That was fantastic. And we will get back to some of these questions. Like if we don't get to all the questions in the webinar, we can put them into like a Google Doc and send out the answers afterwards as well. So let's go over to Jefferson County Public Library with Haley and Sarah. Haley, do you want to screen share?
That would be great. Thank you, Erica. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen.
Not yet. I do not. Oh, yay. Here it comes.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Great.
Terrific. Okay, well, similar to the question I asked Cris and Katie, again, your guys' site caught our eye because you just had so many different events for all ages so quickly. How did your library manage that and readjust staff workflows?
Sure. So similar to San Mateo, we implemented strike teams as soon as we got word that we were going into closure. And so some of those were the call center strike team, communications, pandemic, and then I was placed on the programming strike team, which is comprised of 4 staff members: the programming manager, the IT systems software manager, me, who is the web content coordinator, and then our library to you manager. And our library to you is one of our core services that runs our bookmobile and helps with our home kind of delivery services. And so that group came together. Our first task was to look at the programs we already had upcoming and kind of identify ones that we could easily transition first into call-in programs. Our library to you offers a weekly call-in meditation, so we wanted to keep using that service. And then looking beyond that, so wider scope, so things that would include video conferencing. Using YouTube or a Wednesday watch party, or doing some sort of web conference type of program. And then looking beyond that at some of those one-on-one type of help programs.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you have a mix of programs that don't all require to be online, and you have these call-in programs. So how has the registration or the participation in your call-in programs changed now that folks are sheltering in place?
So since we already had the call-in kind of set up as an option, we've been doing the weekly meditation program for probably about a year now, and we've done it with some other, excuse me, active mind lectures and that sort of thing. So it's pretty easy and comfortable for our community to use, especially because it didn't have that digital divide of needing a screen. You just need a phone to call in. But we've really saw an increase of usage with that type of program. Our normal weekly stats for that mid-morning meditation would be about 10 to 15 people dialing in. After we shifted to being closed in the first week, after some more promotion of that being kind of our only program up and running for the time being, we saw that increase to 30 participants. And then ultimately, we had our highest attendance just a few weeks ago with around 75 participants calling into that, which it maxes out at 100. So we were excited and relieved too that it didn't hit that number, but it was a huge change in what we've seen done with that program before. And then in general, and then more generally, because we've already had that call-in, it kind of became an easy next step to transition some programs we already had going in person to more of a call-in type of thing. So our Hard Times writing workshop is something we offered weekly in person, and saw that that would be something too that we could carry over on the phone, since mostly it's a guided writing session where participants have this opportunity to share their work. And you don't, while it helps to be face-to-face for something like that, it's more about connecting with your community vocally too.
What platforms are you using to support the online programs beyond the call-ins? And do you have other programs beyond online and call-in programs?
Sure. So for the call-in program, we use a service called Uber Conference. And then we noticed that that didn't quite have the same capacity, or it wasn't as robust as we would like it to be for things that we wanted, some virtual or video conferencing programs. So we, part of having that IT member on our team was to look at and analyze different online web conference program offerings. So we've looked at Zoom, WebEx, GoToMeeting, and we landed on WebEx right now for our virtual type of programs, since that gave a little bit more security and had some of the same options as the more standard Zoom. We weren't allowed to use Zoom. So that's what we're doing now. And then beyond that kind of video or call-in program, we're also looking at a few more passive type of programs in the coming weeks. Some of those being a virtual escape room where folks can log on to the site and kind of play at their will, but they don't have to have any sort of other software. Another idea we looked at was kind of a community Lego program or build contest. We won't be pursuing that one at this point, but it's still on our radar. And then we're also, similar to what Cris and Katie mentioned, pursuing those one-on-one type of help programs for legal assistance, social work, and then even tech help.
And beyond your website, what channels are you guys using to promote your online events, and what's been most successful for you?
Sure. So I have an email pulled up. We send out weekly email blasts to our patrons. And this is kind of, we highlight different programs and resources, and that's been really effective for us. One of the most recent ones was just highlighting that story times are back and they're now virtual. We also have had a lot of luck with Facebook, and we actually host one of our programs as a virtual program through Facebook. It's a Wednesday watch party, and that's been really effective as well. And it seems like video programs are the ones that get a lot more engagement on social. But this one, for example, gets about 30 to 40 participants, and then there's 50 comments. Most of them are from us, but it's engaging our audience in kind of conversations online.
And then does the same person host this, or is it a group of folks?
For the Wednesday watch party? It's our social media specialist. He is in charge of running that since he has to download the film, then upload it to Facebook. And then he pre-watches it to kind of make sure it's appropriate for the audience and get some fun trivia facts, which he will scatter throughout watching the film, and comments with the patrons throughout that experience.
So fun.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Sophie, do we have questions for Sarah and Haley?
Yes, we do. Karen Morales asks, do staff handle the call in program, or do you have a professional moderate?
Sure. So part of our programming strike team was to identify kind of resources and staff that would be able to assist with our programs. So each call-in or virtual program has a staff person assigned to be the host who actually runs the show and runs the call, and will be there in case they need to mute anyone or kick anyone out. Some of our programs have an additional staff person who is then the presenter, or that host I previously mentioned works with an outside presenter to make sure they have what they need throughout the call. But there's always a staff person on it and in charge of setting it up.
Great. And we have the same question from a number of different people, Kathy, Corey, Rosalind, and Krista, all asking about kind of how copyright is dealt with for the films, for the watch parties, and how or where do you get your movies to download?
So all of the films that we've shared have been in the public domain, so the copyright is technically expired. We've only had one get flagged by Facebook because there was a question about the copyright of it, but we just directed patrons to another place to find and watch that, and we did our comments differently. I would have to circle back to you on where our social media guy actually goes to get the films himself, but I can provide that information later if that would be helpful.
Great, thank you. That's all the questions that we have for Jefferson County right now.
Great.
Okay, amazing. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, did you want me to stop sharing my screen or?
Yeah, let's go ahead and let's go over to how we are making some changes to how BiblioEvents works so that we can better support these online programs. So we can turn it over to Alex for a second, and then we'll come back to these different, there's so many questions that we want to dive into. So when all this happened, we were trying to figure out at BiblioEvents how can we better support libraries as they have trying to serve their patrons through a completely online experience. And so we have some exciting enhancements coming soon. So I'll turn it to Alex.
Yeah, can you see my screen okay, Erica?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I just have a quick few updates for improvements that we've made in direct response to COVID-19 and libraries closing and having to move their events virtually. So the first piece here is that right now in the BiblioEvents platform, there isn't a way to put an online location. So our dev team has now added this checkbox here with the online events. Right now, for libraries who are using BiblioEvents, you have to go on your ILS and create a location, and then it shows up kind of funny because you have to put in the address. So instead of showing a location name, we will have the online events filter as well as displaying the icon with online event showing. Same thing here for the patron view of event details. Right now on your typical library events, the physical location typically has a map showing, and it can be a bit confusing to patrons when you have to, spin up an address there for events. So we've taken away the map functionality, so when you click on the online events, it won't display. Similar in the confirmation emails right now, in those emails, you might get the address, and instead here, it's going to display the online events instead of the location address. When you create events online, we added this little check mark so that you don't have to filter down. It's not required to have to select a physical location. And so now you can create your online events just by the little check mark, and it'll be able to filter out. And then finally, we know that some of the BiblioEvents calendars can be a little crowded with all of the canceled events. So the other piece of development here is to make it really easy to be able to run a search query that's only showcasing those online events, especially as your branches are closed. So by taking the search query, you can default what's displaying on the homepage, and then libraries can showcase just that limited set of events from the search dropdown on the homepage. Anything else? Any questions there? Or I have Renal and Natasha on the line to help me with any questions too, part of our product team.
The one, this is Natasha. The one thing I'll just clarify is that our developers and QA team are still working at this build, but we'll be looking at putting this functionality out in early May. So watch your release notes and you'll get an update.
We do have one question from Kelly asking what the best practice is for switching current online events with an online events location to the new online events filter option.
So we're looking at making it super easy, where if you clicked the checkbox that Alex had shown, it'll correctly move the event over to be an online event, because you're not actually changing any of the other information unless you want to change the description. But we'll be giving you more information in the documentation, because there's some editing rules that we kind of need to make sure everyone is aware of, existing editing rules. So I think it's easier to explain through documentation. So look out for the documentation that'll come as part of the release notes as well.
Great, and there was just a follow-up. Also, will there be an online events feed attached to location pages?
No, because we won't be associating online events with locations. They're separate entities.
Great, that's all the questions that we have for now.
If your library is a Biblio web library though, you'll be able to like set up a Biblio event widget on your page builder pages that would showcase all of your online events. So that will be a way you can promote it from your homepage, or if you're on like your kids or your books page, you could apply additional event filters to get to the online events that are for a specific audience or about a specific format.
Great, thanks guys.
Great. So yeah, I'll stop sharing, Erica, so you can take it back over.
Okay, sounds good. And just as an example of what Natasha was just talking about, just a second, trying to get back over to my, you can see folks using the widget, like King County, I believe, has the widget on here. And this is also a good example if you're just looking for what kinds of varieties of programs are people putting online. King County has a lot. You can view more here. If you go to Halifax, so here's their website, and they have their online events over here, as well as Jefferson County and San Mateo as well. So they pulled in those widgets right there. Amazing. Well, I wanted to also just talk about kind of what's next and what people are planning and what you're excited about, and maybe even thinking about what you're doing for summer reading, but there's so many great questions. So let's go back to the questions, and then any of our panelists, you guys can jump in as it makes sense, if that works for you guys.
Sure, I will go ahead. I just want to jump back to camera equipment and this question is directed at San Mateo. What kind of camera are you using? Is it just phones or do you have better equipment? How do you share the video clips? And is there a particular video editing software that is easy to use?
So our virtual events right now are all live and we are using Zoom. So our staff are pulling up the camera on their laptops, feeding the video in through Zoom, and for our youth programs that are not interactive, we are filtering that so they're showing up on YouTube. So when you're on our events page for the weekly events, the link that you'll see to access the live event will actually link you to our YouTube channel. And of course, when the video is live, that will pop up. So we are excited in the near future to start experimenting with pre-recorded virtual programs, just as a way of maybe being able to produce more. Right now, to put on our programs live, we do have a presenter and then we have a support person. So there's always two people on the live program to kind of help assist one another, especially if they're reviewing the chats or questions that are coming in. So the person who is actually hosting and presenting doesn't have to get distracted with the technical side of things. But we are looking forward to recording, and when I see how that goes, and if I have extra tips, I'm happy to share that out at a later time when we start looking at editing content.
Great, thank you. Christine asked, did you have any problems with having paraprofessional staff providing programs regarding scope of work or job descriptions?
Is this just for anyone to answer?
Yeah, this was asked during San Mateo's Q&A, but I guess this is kind of open to everyone.
So far, no, not to my knowledge. Our staff have really, I'm so amazed at this energy level that's come up with this shelter in place. I mean, everyone's life has gone through this, you know, very different transition in adjusting to this COVID-19 situation that we're in. And everyone just wanted to participate and wanted to help. And we have tried to organize our system now, moving everyone from the branches to teleworking into 4 different categories where there are smaller task force inside. And staff have been working with their managers to figure out who is best to be put in those certain buckets. So for instance, we have our larger category of customer experience, which is where you'll have the virtual programming teams or the communications, web content support team or social media team, where we're now taking staff from the branches who wanted to support those efforts and putting them on those task force while we're working from home.
Great, thank you. And this is also directed at San Mateo from Mary. What percentage of your events are live versus recorded?
So actually, all of our events start off live and then they are fed to YouTube. And then through YouTube, we do a recording. So all of them start off live, but then they become recordings once the event has actually passed.
Okay, thank you. We have one for Jefferson County from Chrissy. She's a little confused still about the call-in programming. Just wants to know if it's basically a conference call or if it's just a videoless online event.
So it's basically just kind of a conference call. I don't know if you've ever used, say, the Calm app or something like that, where, so like the meditation is just a 30-minute guided meditation that you can do on the phone. And then our call-in program kind of extended beyond that. So for the hard times, it's similar. It's just kind of a guided writing practice like that, but it takes an hour and then they go around and they share. And we have about 30 to 40 participants for that. And then we actually do our book group weekly as a call-in as well. One of the hesitations for that not being a virtual was we wanted to get it up and running right away. And since it's kind of a small, intimate group, it runs kind of more like a conference call.
Okay. We have a question from Rebecca Hershey asking, how can we link events to book lists?
So if you're using BiblioCore for your book lists, then you can add any event, any URL to your book list. So you just pull up a book list, and you can add it at the top, or you can add it at the bottom, or in the middle. And so any list can have any URL added to it, actually. So that would be a great way to promote your lists and events together. And just, again, you just add the link to your list. It's just the URL. So I was just thinking if I could think of one right now that already has lists, because sometimes people do that. I know Edmonton Public, when they promote their podcasts, so they have links to their podcast and they have a link to get to their podcast, but yeah, it's just a URL.
Great. And I have a question from Melissa to San Mateo. Are all your events staff-led, or do you also work with community partners or vendors?
Currently, all of our events are staff-led, but that is another area where we're excited to start looking into now that we've kind of gotten things down and we've figured out a system that's working for us. So stay tuned. Hopefully we'll have some amazing partnerships to showcase live in the coming weeks.
And a question from Farrell from, or to San Mateo, sorry. How many people do you have on your marketing team?
We have 2 full-time, 2 part-time, and myself.
Okay. And we have another question to San Mateo from Stephen. Were you communicating with all patrons via email before this, or did you have to get it up and running or modify it quickly when you started moving online?
We were communicating before shelter in place for larger system-wide news using pulling everyone's email that we had on hand to let patrons know what was going on. And then on top of that, we did have our own dedicated branch newsletters that would go out, but we've slowed down that process and really focused on sending messaging from and on behalf of the system to make sure that there's consistency in the messaging, dates and timelines, and of course, with following the latest news coming out of county with the health ordinances.
Great. We just have a couple more questions left, and then I think I'll turn it back to Erica to kind of close everything off. First is from Charmaine to Jefferson County. So for the call-in programs, she's curious to know if people from other area codes or long distance participate too, or if it's mainly just patrons with local numbers.
As far as we can tell, it's mostly local numbers. That's who kind of knows about it, but I don't think there would be any limitations in terms of if people across the country would like to join in. You're welcome to join in on Thursdays. It's awesome.
And the last question we have is from Robert. To everyone, this is for discussion, so feel free to chime in the chat. Do you see this becoming an area where county systems will make it standard practice to have a senior digital programming producer who makes this kind of programming like a regular part of library services even after all our buildings reopen?
I can at least talk on behalf of San Mateo County on this one. It's so hard to think about future plans at this point, but I know that we are starting to put together our remobilization plan and the phases of what it will look like bringing staff and patrons back into the building. And something that we've been discussing is our virtual programs have been doing so well, and I foresee us really utilizing those programs for some time. We haven't really discussed when things completely return back to normal, but I think as we do more and see how our audience and patrons are engaging with us online, that will better help us plan for future.
Katie, I think I would agree with you on that. I think that at Jefferson County, this has been a really new thing for us. I mean, we've done call-ins and things like that, but being able to utilize our social media guy and the staff who've been really involved in this, I can see us, including this going forward into summer reading especially as, guidelines are telling us how many people we can have in a room and those sorts of things. Be just a good way to open up our libraries even more.
And on that note, I've just launched a poll which kind of covers that same question. And so just before you leave, I know we're a little past 5, but if you wanted to contribute a thought, please add it into the chat below or answer the poll. And I'll turn it over to Erica to kind of close things out.
Thanks, Sophie. So actually, as people answer the poll, you should be able to tell how many people have answered. And then when it looks like about 250 people, which I think is how many people we have on this call, have answered, then you can turn on the results so we can all see. Because I think it's interesting. And I mean, of course, none of us can see into the future, but definitely in terms of like, are we planning to do events as libraries online going forward? It'll be interesting to see what other folks are weighing in on. So as you're voting, or if you've already, not really voting rather, but answered the survey, I just wanted to mention that our next webinar will actually be about summer reading and supporting your summer reading program through BiblioWeb. So our own Alex Park, who used to be a children's librarian and is now a partnership development lead at BiblioCommons, is going to show tips and tricks for how you can set up BiblioWeb, which of course leverages BiblioEvents and BiblioCore to create a fun, engaging experience for your folks, even though libraries may or may not be open, and if they are open, they won't be open the same way that we're used to seeing our libraries super busy all summer long. So can you, Sophie, so I can turn to the next one, can you, let's see the results of our poll?
Sure. I'm just ending the poll now and sharing those results. So you should be able to see.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you. Okay, well, at least it looks like they're here to stay for the foreseeable future. But one other thing I wanted to mention about the webinar, our next webinar that we're doing on in May, if you would like to join us, if your library is planning something special with BiblioWeb for summer reading, or you just want to talk about what you've done in the past and what you plan to do again this year, again, we really appreciate everyone. I know it can feel like, well, we don't have any plans yet, or we're still figuring this out as we go, but everybody's figuring it out as we go right now. So we'd love to feature a partner library or two if you'd like to participate. So just contact Alex at alex@bibliocommons.com if you'd like to join us for that. And we'll send out the link to that next webinar as well. So we are working on a series of webinars focused on the online experience in public libraries, and this is part of it. But if you have a topic request, just let us know at info@bibliocommons.com, and we will work to make that webinar happen, because we want to be just a good resource for everybody. You're all doing such amazing work, and we just feel super grateful to work with so many amazing libraries. So thank you a million times to our amazing panelists. So everyone can give them a little virtual applause. So thank you, Katie and Cris and Haley and Sarah. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their National Library Week and keep doing awesome things. Thanks, guys.